Welcome into WagerTalk TV. I am Drew Martin, joined by Robbie Vino and Tony Finn of WagerTalk.com. ACC football, college football on Saturday here. We're talking Wake Forest hitting the road here to Chapel Hill, taking on UNC, Robbie Vino. UNC open -1. Now we're seeing 2.5, almost across the board. High total here, but high for a reason, 76. Wake Forest putting their undefeated record on the line. What do you like in between the Demon Deacons and the Tar Heels?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes surface handicaps are just that, Joe. Drew, surface handicaps. If you don't like over, you probably don't play the total. If you like the side, we can get into that a little bit here. Let me just say this. Last year's game goes 59-53, 112 points. Sam Howell, quarterback for UNC, throws for 550 yards, 6 TDs, no interceptions. Sam Hartman, quarterback for Wake Forest, throws for 429 yards. So just to add that up, that's 979 passing yards in the game. He throws for 4 TDs and no interceptions. That's 10 TDs, almost 1,000 yards passing, and no interceptions. And I don't know, after watching these teams this year, where that changes. I would like to say that coaches go back, they watch game film, they see what went wrong in a contest like that, and try to repair what went wrong, which would be the defense. But neither one of these defenses looks like they're capable of stopping this type of offense. North Carolina doesn't have the same talent that they had last year. Remember Carter and Javonte Walker, Williams, they're in the NFL now. They're both their running backs. They've got wide receivers, De'Ami Brown in the NFL now. They've replaced those guys. They're not quite as dynamic, but certainly they lit up Notre Dame last week. Notre Dame's got a better defense than does Wake Forest. So in short, you'll probably see a lot more of the same where offense is concerned in this game. There's no weather concerns in Chapel Hill on Saturday. It'll be high 40s to low 50s, no wind, no rain. So, the field's going to be a fast track for both of these teams. Where the side is concerned, guys, I think there's heavier importance on this game for North Carolina. Drew, you mentioned the 8-0 that Wake Forest is walking in here with. 8-0 is nice. To go undefeated would be nice. But what would be even nicer for this team is to win the ACC Atlantic Division. And they've got 2 big games on deck where that's concerned. Right now, they're in the lead. But next week, they play NC State, who's 1 game behind them. That will likely be for a position in the ACC championship game. And the week after that, they have a trip to Clemson, which might not be real easy. So the important games for Wake Forest, I think, lie ahead. This is a game against a non-division team. And this particular non-division team, North Carolina, sits at 4-4 right now. You need 6 wins to get into a bowl game. God forbid Mac Brown doesn't get into a bowl game with this team this year, but his schedule is not real easy to finish out the year. If he loses here and goes to 4-5, they still have to go to Pittsburgh. They still have to go to arch rival NC State. There's a possibility they don't get to 6 if they don't win this one. So I think the importance lies more with North Carolina in this game than it does Wake Forest. As far as a selection on it, I'll tell you what I like the best. I like first half over. The first half over in this game is 36.5. What the odds makers are telling us is that if you can get to 20-17 at halftime, you win. Last year at halftime, it was 35-24, 59 points. That's a 22-point difference. I don't think there's 22 points. Or in other words, I don't think the total can come down, or they'll score 22 points less in the first half than they did last year. So for me, I think first half over at this price. It's not going to stay here, guys. It's going to be 37, 37.5, maybe even 38 by game time. So if you want to play it now. That would be my best recommendation. First half over 36.5.
First half over from Robbie Vino. Tony, coming to you next, 76 being the total. This is one I'd look to rev up and go over as well. But sidewise, it's a fascinating handicap. Robbie brought up a lot of points here towards UNC. Wake Forest is 8-0, though, Tony. They've beaten some decent teams along the way. Their next 4 games going to set them up well, competitively priced games. You got to think they're starting to look ahead and hoping for the best, looking towards the playoffs even. It starts here, though, against UNC in a competitively priced game of its own in Chapel Hill. What are you like in UNC and Wake, Tony?
And that is, I think what Rob has outlined for you and what you said, excited about playing over a 76, is the only way this doesn't go over is if they score so many points in the first half that they break the scoreboard and no longer can they keep track of the score. That's the only way it's not going over, because I agree with you guys wholeheartedly on this. This thing sets up, first off, you're right. Wake Forest has played down the list, Old Dominion, Norfolk State. Really, in Florida State, you saw what you had. If you watched that game like I did, while they did win 35-14, it was when Florida State was still fairly messed up. They're not where they should be anyway, but they're still much better today than they were back then. And then they played Virginia, which is a decent team, maybe by 20. But after that, Syracuse, where they won in overtime, they had no business winning, in truth. They really didn't. Army scored 56 points, and they took 70 points to beat Army. And Duke, they handled Duke pretty well last week. But I'm going to throw that aside and say that when we see the rankings tonight, guys. They're going to come out with these preliminary rankings, right, for the January 4. That I think we'd all shake our heads and agree that this is a way for ESPN to sell advertising spots and get people kind of revved up for what will be the only thing that matters. Because I promise you that whoever's in them rankings tonight will not be the January 4. We can have an argument and a video on that one. But I like this game. This is almost a theme. We've seen it all season long, where a ranked team is playing an unranked team, and the unranked team is giving points to the ranked team. We saw it last week. We saw a big example of it last week, right, with Iowa and Wisconsin. Iowa comes in. They were just 2 weeks ago. They were the number 2 team in the country. They go in at last week, 10s or 11s, whatever it was, very similar to this one, and they got schooled by Wisconsin. I mean, absolutely schooled by a Wisconsin team. I think is one dimensional as Iowa is. So you've seen it all season long. You're going to see it this week. I like North Carolina. I've watched a lot of Wake Forest. North Carolina had their chances to beat a Notre Dame team, which has grown by leaps and bounds. They replaced 4 offensive linemen. Their offensive line against USC, absolutely, they just manhandled USC, which has got a talented offensive line. They're undisciplined, but our defensive line, but they manhandled them. They basically stuck their little finger out and said, "You're going to go this way. I'm going to take you this way, and this is the way you're going to go because my running back's behind me." And the final score was not indicative of what Notre Dame did to USC. That said, here we are. I like North Carolina. I like Mac Brown. They're the more dynamic team. Wake Forest is, although they've scored a lot of points, and they've scored 35 points in every single game this year, guys. They aren't as dynamic as North Carolina. And North Carolina, if it's down to a team that has to score, let's say a team between these two that has to score in a minute and a half, give me North Carolina every single day of the week, even on Sunday. Give me North Carolina minus the 2 points over the top ACC team in the league right now.
Record-wise, they are. That's speaking of the Demon Deacons of Wake Forest. Going to be a good one in Chapel Hill, kicking us off on Saturday. For Robbie Vino, Tony Finn, I am Drew Martin. Guys, make sure to check out the WagerTalk Live Odds screen. We talked about Wake Forest UNC taking some money from -1 to -2.5. Keep up to date with those line moves. You see the tab there towards the top right. Check it out, WagerTalk.com.